Well, you mentioned the cover-up is really focused on world energy and how trillions and trillions of dollars are made with oil, gas, fossil fuels, and so forth. And you're basically saying that the U.S. and possibly other governments have unlimited clean energy.
Sure.
Using alien technology.
Well, not the U.S. government that's constitutional, but the secret government does.
Okay.
There are two governments.
Right.
At least two.
Right. So what they're saying, well, what you're saying is that if this was actually uncovered, all these industries would collapse in one day.
Well,
but it would benefit the Earth.
Here's the thing. And I was on a show, Patrick David has a show.
Yeah, I know Patrick. I interviewed him.
And this came up in that interview. I said, look, if someone came in right now and put on that table one of these 0-point or free energy devices, to get it from that phase to where it's being manufactured, mass manufacturing, to replace the 1.5 billion motor vehicle engines in the world, and to provide all the energy for 2.5 billion homes on the planet, plus all the hundreds of millions of businesses, factories, that's going to be 15, 20 years. If you did it like the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe after World War II. So it's not as if there isn't going to be a transition, because just logistically, it's not possible to make it happen all at once. But it would eventually cause the elimination of the need for all fossil fuels, nuclear, wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric dams. All of it would be obsolete. Now, my argument is that should have happened 100 years ago. That's why we did the documentary, The Lost Century, right? Now, the most recent documentary we released is called Battle for Disclosure. And if you look at Battle for Disclosure, that deals with some of this as well, because the big question is going to be, do we do a real honest disclosure or sort of a fake one, light one? Because an honest one is going to include the man-made. I mentioned this earlier. That's a bigger secret than the non-human, right?
Well, are you talking about a 0-point quantum vacuum spacetime?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about right now.
Sure. And we can put, I'm meeting with someone, what is today? Yeah, tomorrow, who's an inventor and has 20 patents and has come across this and doesn't know what to do with it. So that has to be open sourced, or it has to be put out without patents and released massively. Because over the last 100 years, anyone who's tried to use a conventional business model or the patent office have had it seized. We can prove this. And meanwhile, the Earth is being greatly damaged by how, look, there are 8 billion people living on the planet like we did in the 1800s in the Industrial Revolution. Oil, gas, coal, the roads, internal combustion engines. That was Mercedes, 1888. Even rockets, 1940s, Werner von Braun. So, and nuclear, 1945. So I always ask people, do you really think there's been no developments in energy generation in 80 years? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's
been ruthlessly suppressed.
No, I had a conversation with someone about this recently where, if you really think about it, when you get into a plane and you fly across country, it's pretty much the same thing as doing it in the 70s.
Oh.
50 years
60s.
later, the planes go about as fast. They're about as big.
Right.
And there's really no major difference in flying now. I mean, maybe the planes are a little nicer and the seats are a little cushier, but that's about it.
The same as a 707 in the early 60s.
Yeah.
So we're talking 60 years later.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So there's really been almost no technological developments in air travel.
Or
not commercial air travel.
Or energy generation, even more fundamental.
Yeah, I mean, we're still using nuclear, we're still using coal, we're still using gas. Solar power is not quite there yet.
No. And it's never going to get there, not the way it's configured. Now, there have been people who've done what are called solar collectors. That isn't just the normal photons, but all the energy that comes from the sun that rectifies it into very powerful, like something this big that would run your house. Those have all been confiscated. I've spoken to a couple of inventors. And if people doubt it, go look at the 2010 report by the Federation of American Scientists. It's in it may be in the briefing document here that I'm going to give you. It's the president's and the Congress's briefing document, redacted of certain things, but you'll have a copy. And people can order it now and go to drstephen.greer.com and order this. It just came out this week. So that technology should have been out decades ago, and it would have enabled us to have a civilization by now with no pollution and no poverty. But of course, whether it was 100 years ago in the time of Tesla, the real Tesla, not the Tesla car company, or now, it's the same powerful industrial global interests that don't want it out, right? To the detriment of 99.999% of humanity. So at a certain point, I think that we're going to have to say, well, we have to start that process somehow. And this document, this research by the Federation of American Scientists found that in 1970, there was a solar panel as efficient or more than anything we have today, and it had a national security seizure order on it because the price point of that would have competed with coal and gas back then, 50-some years ago. So this nonsense, the abuse, here it is, the abuse of the National Security Authority under patent and invention laws, and that continues even if you don't patent your technology, stormtroopers will come into your lab and take it, right? You don't even have to apply for a patent once they find out you have something like that. So this thuggery, which is what it is, makes a mockery out of democracy, but also out of a free market. You know, everybody, we have a free market economy. I said, like the hell we do. I mean, how do you have a free market economy if the most important inventions of the last 100 years have been ruthlessly suppressed to the benefit of a handful of global oligarchs? Nonsense. It's utterly ridiculous. It's a myth.